So in this video we're going to be talking about exponents, and of course we're still working at the bottom part of this handout, but before going to the handout, let me just explain what the bottom part of that page says. We have an example, 2 to the third power, and there's a couple of things that we need to know. The 2 is called the base, and this little 3 up here, that's called the exponent or power. So the way exponents work, I'm pretty sure we already know this, but bear with me here. The way it works is that the power, the 3, that little number up there, tells you how many times to multiply the base with itself. So if you have a 3 up here, that means you need to write this 2 that many times, 3 times. So let's exactly do that. I want to say 2 times 2 times 2. What if I only got, is that correct? No, that's wrong. Why? Because there's too many 2's. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we only need 3. Okay, my bad. So let's only do 3 of them. There we go. So this is what we call, ladies and gentlemen, expanded form. We took the exponent, or we took the 2 to the third power, and we expanded it to 2 times 2 times 2. This is expanded form. Now the final answer is, we need to think about this. 2 times 2, that's 4. And then 4 times 2, that is 8. So the answer here is 8. It's important that we understand how to do this expanded form, okay? So once again, the little number up here tells you how many times to multiply the base with itself. And that's exactly what I explained down here on the bottom part of our handout, talking about expanded form there. That would be this situation. 2 to the third is really 2 times 2 times 2. Let's look at the back side of this page. So on the back side of this page, we come up with 2 problems, and they're very important. Let's take a look at these 2 examples, and the whole idea is to get you to realize that parentheses, these parentheses right here, really do make a difference compared to not having parentheses. The parentheses themselves tell you that you're including this negative sign, so this base is truly -3. This base over here is not -3. This base is 3, and of course it has a negative in front. So right here with the parentheses, you're including that negative sign as part of the base. So your base is -3. Now what does that mean really? Now I explain it over here. Let me show you over here. What does it mean that the parentheses make this base -3? So when you expand it, when you say that you're going to do the second power, this base to the second power, you're going to write this base exactly the way it is, including that negative sign 2 times. So here it is, -3 times the same base, -3. So you have that exact base written 2 times. 1, 2, you're multiplying. What is -3 times a -3? A negative times a negative is a positive, +9. Now what happens when you do not have those parentheses? Well, then you're not including that negative sign in your base. So what really happens is that you have 3 to the second, and you need to figure out what 3 to the second is. We all know that that means 3 times 3, but you have this negative sign out in the front that you need to slap out in the front of your problem. Okay, so once again, this negative sign, it just gets written out here in the front. So notice that the negative does not belong to the 3. In other words, the base is not -3, the base is just 3. Okay, so when we do this math problem, we have 3 times 3, or a -3 times a +3. That'll give you a -9. Or you could have done it 3 times 3 is 9, and then take that negative and slap it on to your answer. Okay, but notice the big difference. When you have parentheses, the base is really negative times a negative, which gives you a positive. When you don't have parentheses, the base is only 3, and you take that negative sign and put it in front of your answer, and you're done. Okay, so parentheses truly make a difference. Let's take a look at number 1 right here. On the practice, it does not have parentheses. So if I wanted to expand this, which I want everybody to practice doing right now, later on once you get really good at this, you don't have to expand it. But right now I would like you to expand it. So you have 5 squared. What is 5 squared? That's 5 times 5. And now what about this negative sign out here in the front? Let's just slap it right in front of our answer right there. So what is 5 times 5? Well, the answer is 25. What about that negative that's out in the front? You just put it out in the front. So your answer is -25, okay? Now, if we had parentheses around the negative sign, that would make a huge difference. That would have made it a positive 25, but we don't have it. Now, right here, we really do have parentheses around that negative sign. So let me expand number 2. So I'm going to write the base. What is the base? It's negative 2, and I'm going to write that base 4 times. Okay, so let me write it with parentheses and all. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And now let's just do some math. We could do this several different ways. We could just say, okay, what's negative 2 times negative 2? It's positive 4 times negative 2. It's negative 8 times negative 2. That's positive 16. So, or you could pair them up. What do I mean by pair them up? You could say, what's negative 2 times negative 2? Oh, that's positive 4. And what's negative 2 times negative 2? Oh, that's positive 4. And what is happening between the two? You're multiplying. So our real problem becomes 4 times 4, which is 16. Okay, so the parentheses really do make a difference. And I'll go over a different example right now to help us even understand this more. Number 3, we do not have parentheses, so when I expand, I look at the base. The base is only 4, not negative 4. Even though it looks like negative 4, I mean, even if you were to read it, it does sound like it. It says negative 4 to the second power. But there are no parentheses, which means that you're going to do 4 squared, and then you're going to slap a negative in front of your answer. So what is 4 squared? That's 4 times 4. So the answer is 16. And what about this negative sign? You just put it right in front of your answer. Okay. Now, technically, you should have written it right here on the expanded form. Let's move on to the last one here, I believe. Negative 7 in parentheses to the second power. So when you expand, you write it 2 times. Negative 7 times negative 7. The answer is positive 49. Well, I thought that was the last one. I have one more. Okay, negative 2 to the 5th. So right there, you're going to expand it. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Let's save some time there. But anyway, we have 5 total negative 2's, and we're going to multiply them. And I'm going to actually group them, right? I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 2. That's positive 4. I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 2. That's another positive 4. And of course, we are multiplying in between the two. And I'm simply going to bring down this final negative 2. I'm going to put multiplication right here of negative 2. So what is 4 times 4? That's 16. And then what is 16 times negative 2? Well, a positive times a negative is a negative, and 16 doubled, that would be 32. So the answer is negative 32. I want to take this moment to do one final exercise with regards to parentheses and exponents. Let me move this to the side. By the way, all this is your homework, and we should have answers posted later on Edmodo. But here's what I want to do. What is negative 1 to the second power? And it is in parentheses. Well, in expanded form, it's negative 1 times negative 1, which means that the answer is 1, positive 1, right? A negative times a negative is a positive. Now, what happens if it becomes negative 1 to the third power? Well, you have negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 3 times, all with parentheses, all with the negative included. And of course, you could solve it how you like. You could do one at a time, or you could group them. This is positive 1, and then positive 1 times that negative 1. You end up with a negative 1 as an answer. And if we were to do negative 1 to the fourth power, and you expand it, and of course you could group them again. Negative times a negative is a positive, so it's really positive 1, and then negative times a negative is a positive, so you have 1 times 1, so your final answer is positive 1. And if you keep going, you're going to see a pattern here. Negative 1 to the fifth power is negative 1 times itself 5 times. And of course, if you do the math there, you're going to be able to pair them up, right? This is a positive 1, this is a positive 1, and there's an odd 1 out, which means that it takes you back to negative 1. Okay, so notice that I used the word odd. I did that on purpose. There is no coincidence there. If there's an odd 1 out, your answer is going to be negative. So whenever your exponent is even, and you have a negative inside the parentheses, your answer will be positive. But whenever your exponent is odd, when you have a negative inside the parentheses, your answer will be negative. Why? Because when you pair them up, there's going to be one odd 1 out, which means that it takes you back to negative. Now, if it's even, of course, all of them will pair up, making everything positive, making your answer positive. So keep that in mind. So if I said what is negative 1 to the 78th power? Well, you know that that's even. That would be a positive 1. Likewise, if I were to say, what is negative 1 to the 93rd power? Well, you know it's odd, so that would be negative 1. So we are going to use this truth right here about having the negative 1 in parentheses with the odd exponent being negative and even exponent being positive. We're going to use that truth on our homework. Let me show you. So here's our homework, and as you can see down here, we should know that this one is going to be, because the exponent is odd, you're not going to be able to pair up all the negative ones. If you were to expand it, you're going to have one odd one out, which makes it negative. So this is going to be a negative 1. This one would also be a negative 1. Why? Because the exponent is odd. And you could even use this truth when you don't have the base negative 1. Like let's say you had the base negative 2. Well, for a fact, you know that your answer is going to be negative because you have an odd exponent right there. I'm not saying what the answer is, but the answer will be a negative number because it's odd and there's a negative included on the inside of the parentheses. So right here, this one, the answer is going to be negative because if you expand it, you'll have a negative times a negative times a negative, and there's one odd one out that doesn't pair up, which means that your answer is a negative. So I hope this helps, guys. Exponents. This one, the answer is going to be positive. Why is that? Because the exponent is even. So I hope this helps, and be ready for this. This is about all the information that we need to be prepared for the very first test in this class.